Hi, welcome back to Lockdown Writing Class with Elle McNicoll, Books and Chokers. Session number 12? Is it 12? Wow, we are almost at the very end. Thank you so much for all your wonderful work. It's been a really hard week. It's been a really hard week in lockdown for me. I just had one of those weeks where it was really rubbish and you just get emotional and you're just trapped in your house and can't go anywhere. And I just got really sad. So I really enjoyed the work that everyone sent in, and that really did cheer me up, so thank you. Iona from S2, I loved your dialogue. Fantastic. Please write the whole book. Excellent. So yeah, it's just a tricky old lockdown week. So that's why I thought I'd film this, because I'm really excited. I think I said way back at the very beginning this is going to be my favourite session. This is Villain Antagonist. Yay. I think a good villain is every bit as important, if not more important, than a good hero. Good villain in the sense of well written, well crafted. And first of all, we need to talk about villain and antagonist. They're two words and they actually are different. So a villain is somebody who is evil, not evil, but evil. And they are, they're dastardly and they're bad, basically. They're, a villain is somebody bad. So, who's a bit, well, Lord Voldemort is the villain that everybody will know. Sauron is a villain. The witch, the Jadis, the Queen of Narnia is a villain. So a villainess is a baddie in the classic sense of the word. So in a kind of spark, the villain is Miss Murphy, the horrible teacher who shouldn't be a teacher and who doesn't like kids that are different and gets a kick out of treating them horribly. So she is the villain, with absolutely no mistake. Okay, so I can't really talk about it because it's not out yet, but there is a villain in Show Us Who You Are, and it's my most favourite villain I've ever done, and yeah, can't talk about it because it's top secret, but a villain. So a villain is a baddie. They're just bad. And the book that we're going to talk about this week at the end of this video has got a baddie in it, like a proper classic villain. And speaking of, that book's very reminiscent of old James Bond films, and a James Bond film has to have a great villain. So, Blofeld, Goldfinger, and Dr. No, it's got to have a great villain to go up against James Bond. So, Disney villains, we've got, Ursula, Jafar, Gaston, Mother Gothel, like these great, a Disney film always has a great villain as well to go along with a prince or a princess or a hero or a heroine. So a villain is kind of what we learn from stories very early on, a baddie. Someone that wants to hurt the hero. Very simple. An antagonist is a little bit different. An antagonist doesn't actually necessarily equal a villain. Sometimes they are the same thing, sometimes not. So the antagonists in a kind of spark are the villagers, the council. They don't hate Addie, but they want to stop her getting what she wants. So they are antagonists. An antagonist is somebody who gets in the way of what the character wants. And their motivations for doing so might not be rooted in evil. It might be rooted in very noble causes, and so an antagonist is very different. So when you're writing your story, and I know you'll all be well into your work by now, and we did characterization back in weeks 2 and 3, you will need a villain or an antagonist, and you'll need to know which one they are. They could be both, they could be an antagonist or whatever. You might have a villain and an antagonist and they're different people. You will need to know their motivations, because while someone who's twirling a mustache is a lot of fun, it's important to examine why someone is evil. Because, look, we all live in a country with laws. I don't know, I know we're not everyone watching this is from the UK. I know we have someone watching from Spain, which is really exciting, I heard. But most countries have similar laws where, some things are not allowed, and if you do the thing that isn't allowed, then you're a bad person. That's what, that's the black and white view. So laws are a way of measuring morality, but morality actually can sometimes be very grey. What I consider bad, some people consider totally fine, which is frustrating, but that's what it is. And you know, so you have to decide what your character's moral codes are. And most of the time, people who are doing bad things don't think that they're doing bad things. They think that they're doing something brilliant. They think that they're doing something right. Very, very few people, although I'm sure there are some, very, very few people wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to be bad today. I'm going to just be evil for the sake of it. Most evil comes from people who think that they're doing something very good. So it's important to examine your villain or your antagonist and what are their motivations. Why do they do the things that they do? So people really don't like Miss Murphy, and they like to write in and tell me how much they don't like Miss Murphy. And I, you know, I was a little bit limited writing this because it is from Addie's point of view. It is from the perspective of someone who's 11 years old, and at 11 years old, you don't have, you know, a world of knowledge because you're only 11. You don't know all the ins and outs of the world just yet. Although you're still smarter than a lot of adults, I will say. So you maybe don't have insight into why adults behave the way that they do. And that's very much Addie's perspective. She doesn't know why Miss Murphy is horrible to her. She just knows how it makes her feel. And it was important to me that I couldn't have a first person narrator who's 11 years old go, well, I think Miss Murphy's treating me this way because she's frustrated in her career and her life hasn't turned out the way she wants and she doesn't like to extend empathy to people who are no, she can't do any of that, you know, psychoanalyzing because she's only 11. She just knows that the teacher's horrible. So that's why it's that way in the book. But I know as the author why Miss Murphy is the way that she is. I know why she behaves in that way, why she's nice to some students but not to Addie. I know that. So when you're writing, and this goes back to character, what we were talking about earlier, you are like a duck. Okay? The reader will just see you floating smoothly on the surface, but underneath the surface your feet are going like that because you're doing so much work. That's what you have to do with character, especially with villains. All the work that you do, 80% of it might not end up in the book. It just might not. But you know it, and that's why you will feel confident to make your character do certain things. So it's really important to know what your villain wants and what your villain is afraid of and what your villain's motivations are, just as much as it is your hero's. And with the book that I'm working on right now, that I'm hopefully going to start properly writing, is my third middle grade, and the villain and the hero in that book are like two sides of the same coin. They are very similar, and they've both chosen different paths, and that's the exciting thing. That's the dichotomy, is that we are very similar and yet we've chosen completely different things, and that's going to be something interesting to explore. But I have to give the villain and who is also the antagonist, I have to give them so much care and attention to make sure that they are every bit as fleshed out and fully fully three-dimensional as the hero. Otherwise it's not going to be very interesting. It's going to be very cartoonish. And we don't want that. So that's something to think about. What does my villain / antagonist want? And like I said earlier, it's okay to have two. It's okay to have a big villain and an antagonist. So I'm sorry to keep using Harry Potter, but I just need to know that I can use a book that everybody will most likely know. But if we look at someone like Harry Potter, the villain is very, very obviously Lord Voldemort, known as you know who. But there are many antagonists. Uncle Vernon is an antagonist. He's trying to stop Harry getting what he wants. He's trying to stop Harry getting his Hogwarts letter. He's trying to stop Harry enjoying his life. He's just trying to stop all of these things happening. Professor Umbridge is also an antagonist in Order of the Phoenix, while Lord Voldemort is doing all this, I was going to say viliful, but that's not a word. While Lord Voldemort is doing all of these terrible things, Professor Umbridge is also getting in Harry's way and stopping him from working out how to stop him. So you can have a villain and antagonists. That's totally okay. You can have more than one villain, you can have more than one antagonist. Totally grand, not a problem. Maybe your hero is a villain. Maybe you're writing a story about a baddie. They still will need an antagonist. It doesn't cancel out the fact that they need an antagonist. So that's something to think about. We're seeing a lot of that at the moment. Disney are doing a lot of films about would-be villains that are now anti-heroes, like Maleficent. There's a trailer just dropped about Cruella de Vil. Not sure how they're going to explain why she ended up wanting to skin a bunch of puppies to make a coat, and I'm not sure how they're going to make that sympathetic, but they're going to try. So, you know, your main character might be a villain. You know, they all, you know, people do say that we're all the villain in somebody's stories. So, you know, it's good to think about, like, is my character a villain in themselves? So anyway, I cannot stress enough how essential a good villain / antagonist is for your story, and it's going to make your story a lot easier. And they do not have to be at odds all the time. They do not have to be fighting all the time. Frodo thought Gollum was on his side right up until the end. You know, you can do so much with that relationship, and it doesn't always have to be good versus bad. That's just my opinion. You look at something like Hamilton, the musical, the villain is probably, you know, King George. You know, he sings a few songs and that's it. The antagonist is very much, or Thomas Jefferson is maybe the villain. Burr is very much an antagonist, and he and Hamilton are locked in this really interesting relationship. So that's something to think about as well. And finally, I want to talk about a really fantastic book for this week. And I could have done this earlier when it was Valentine's Day, because it would have been very fitting, but I wanted to wait till we did Villain Antagonist, because this is By Spy by Maz Evans, published by Chicken House, and it has a great villain in it, and it, like I said earlier in the video, it's reminiscent of those old Bond films where there's a fab villain, and you know, the villain's lowering them into vats of unpleasant things, and you know, it's very dastardly. But there's definitely antagonism going on in the novel as well, that is not just about Umbra, the villain, the supervillain. What I love about Maz's writing is that she is hilarious. She's incredibly funny. If you really need a laugh, then I cannot recommend this enough. But she always has a really big heart in all of her stories, which is what I need from anything that I read. I can't take, you know, slapstick without heart, and Maz's incredibly layered stories that always have a really big gut punch at the heart of them. And she's just incredibly funny on top of that. And Vi is a great heroine. And there's some great other characters. There's Easter, there's George, there's so many, you know, it's a really, really fun, and you'll fly through it because it's so much fun. But the reason I also wanted to shout out this book, not only because Umbra's a great example of a villain, and that's not a spoiler, right? That's not, I hope not. Reminds me a little bit of The Incredibles, which is one of my favourite films, which has Syndrome in it, which is a phenomenal villain. But the reason I wanted to pick one of Maz's books was because Maz is such a great role model for both adults and kids. I remember when I watched Maz speak for the first time, and I was like, oh, this is someone who's really engaging and really interesting and doesn't send me to sleep. And I just remember thinking, you know, when I was the age that you guys were, the sun has decided to come out, and I'm not getting beamed up to heaven. It just has decided to get really bright. Anyway, we're not going to cut, we're going to power through. And she was really engaging and really funny and really witty and warm. And I thought, wow, that's the kind of author I would have loved to have come to my school when I was a kid. We had like one author come once, only the top sets got to see it, and they could not have run to their car faster when this event was over. Like, they legged it to the car. They did not like children. Anyway, you know, fair enough. But Maz is a really great role model, and Maz has been really good to me since I became a children's author, since I debuted in June of last year as a debutante. Maz was really, really kind to me, which she didn't have to be, and not everyone was. So it was incredibly moving for me because I was already such a fan of her work. So of course we were going to have a Maz Evans book at some point in this series. Phenomenal writer, funny, warm, lots of heart, exactly what a great kids book should be, and a really good example of villain antagonist if you want to pick this one up. Phenomenal. And finally, the sun, nope, still quite bright. Finally, the bookshop that I want to shout out this week is Rabbit Hole, and they are really fun on Twitter, and they're a little indie kids bookshop, and they were one of the first people ever to have Spark, you know, I think the shop was closed at the time because bookshops were shut when Spark came out, but they took a picture of the book in the shop anyway, which meant a lot to me, and I really love seeing them pop up on Twitter. They're a lot of fun. So, cool. For homework, I know I said I wouldn't call it homework, but for your assignment, should you choose to accept it, because we were talking about Bond, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is I want you to write a quick profile on your villain or your antagonist. Who are they? Where have they come from? What do they want? What are they scared of? what is their relationship to the hero, why are they the villain of the story / the antagonist of the story. I want you to do a quick hot seat, you know, get all the information you can about them, and believe me, when you have that and when you explore that, it will be so much easier to write, I promise you. Awesome, cool. So we don't have long to go, guys. This is near the end. The next session is on Monday, and it is going to be about the publishing process. So everything that you need to know about getting a book published, which is the final, you know, kind of in the final stages of writing. And I will be taking any questions that you have. If you have any questions at all about what is publishing, what do publishers do, how do you get a book published, la la la, any question, send them to me. I'm going to go on Twitter as well and ask people if they have any questions. I still have questions, and I've been doing this for a while. So feel free to send them my way, and we'll get them answered, and we'll talk about it, and I'll get some people from the industry that I know to give their top tips. Because, you know, when I was a kid, I had no idea how books got published. It was such a big mystery. It does feel like a secret society sometimes. So we'll be answering those questions on Monday. And then a week today on Friday, we're going to, and I'll be talking about editing as well, which is a really important thing to talk about when you're a writer, because you have to know how to edit your work. And then a week today on Friday, we're going to talk about, we're going to have a heart-to-heart real conversation, and it's going to be called, what kind of writer do you want to be? And we're going to be talking about that very question, and anxiety and writer's block, and the difficulties I've had, and how I've overcome them, and you know, just being a writer. We're going to have a heart-to-heart chat about that a week today on Friday, and then the following Monday, which is the 1st of March, we're going to do Putting It All Together, where we're going to talk about writing rules and how to make your own rule book, and then we are done, we are finished. And I've just loved doing this with you guys, and I'm so glad we have 3 more sessions, and they're going to be nice and long. And again, send me your work, send me your questions if you like. And then we'll, by the time we're done on the 1st of March, that's going to be World Book Week, and then Show comes out a few days after that. And I really hope some of you buy it and that you like it, because if you stuck with me this long, I mean, you know me by now. So anyway, awesome. I'll see you on Friday. Monday. See, the sun went away and I lost everything. I just lost my train of thought. See you on Monday, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.